Hello everybody and welcome to another video. In this video, I basically want to introduce parameters. Parameters is a new concept. Unless you guys had this class before or seen programming, this is a very new concept. And this is the concept that many people like really enjoy because you can see the magic that happens with it. So parameters is the idea of taking information from one place and passing it into another place. So remember how I said last couple of videos and last couple of weeks, I said, okay, don't worry about what goes inside of here. We'll talk about that later. So what this is doing, if we were to read this code right now, we will say that we've used zero parameters. And how you could tell is you see right here, there's nothing inside the parentheses, meaning that this method doesn't take any parameters. But as you can see here, main is a method, right? It takes in something inside the parentheses. So whenever you see a method that has something inside the parentheses, that's known as a parameter. And parameter is basically a way to pass information from one source to another source. So let's say I want to print out system dot out dot println, and I want to print out 10. So let's go ahead and again, it's just review. It's just going to print out 10. But let's just say I passed in a variable that actually did that. So let's say I did string. And here we go inside the parentheses, and let's say we type in string word. So I know I typed something that some of you guys are already lost by now. What I've done is inside the method called parameters, I passed in a variable of string called word. So now what this method is doing is it's taking in a string called word. So that means whenever I call parameters, I have to actually define what word is. So let's go ahead and compile, see what this does. See, now we get a very interesting error that we haven't seen before, and it says intro to parameters, method parameters in class, intro to parameters cannot be applied to given type. So what it's saying is we are calling a method called parameters, and here in the main method, it takes in nothing. So what the program is saying is I cannot find a method that takes in nothing as its parameter. So here it's saying, it says, but I did find a method called parameters, but it takes in a string word. So one way I could fix this is I could copy this and delete this. Again, remember how I said you can't have the same parameter names? And I told you for now, assume that the methods that you write will be unique. And now here's the case where this rule does not apply. I could have the same method names as long as their method signature is different. And what's the method signature? That means the amount of parameters that it takes in. So for example, I could have one method called parameters that just takes in a string. I could have another method called parameters that takes in nothing. And this will basically fix our error. Yes, this will fix our error. But let's say that that's not the problem that I want to solve. Let's say I want to solve it by only using one method. So here, if I compile it, it's going back to the same error. It's saying you're calling a method called parameters that takes in nothing, but I only found a method called parameters that takes in a word. So what you do here is you type in the word, you give it the value that the method takes in. So in this case, you don't do string word here. You actually give it a string. So you could say like cookies. If I compile this, I could print out 10. But here's the thing. I have a string. I have now that the string is coming from a different source. In this case, it's coming from the main method cookies. I could use that wherever I want. So let's say I printed out. Let me call this name actually, and I said my name is. I do a plus, and then remember how I said you could take one string and add it. Let's see what this does. My name is Cookies. That is very powerful. Let's walk through what it does. So what we are doing is we are calling my name is, and then we have a variable called name. And where's that coming from? It's coming from this method. And where is that coming from? And it's coming from whenever I call parameters, I actually have to give it a string. So let's say cookies, right? So I could call this method again, and I could say Emily, and I could compile it and run it. And notice how method calls works exactly the way that we've been talking about since like the second week of class. So what we do is parameters, publics. We are calling a method called parameters, and we are passing a value of cookies because this method takes in a string. So here we're saying system.println my name is, and then we are giving it a name. So in this case, whenever I call it, I actually have to give it a name. So here's the nice thing about parameters. Parameters don't have to really figure out what their values are. They could just assume that that value will come to them. So for in this case, when I'm calling the method called parameters, which has a string name, I can assume that net name, whenever I use it, will be called name. I can have as many parameters as I want. I could say int x. I could say int x. Again, if I compile this, this will not run. That's because now this method is taking in something inside the parentheses, and if I actually want to call it, I actually have to give it a value. I have to give it 0, and I have to give it, like, let's say 12. And here, see how now we are calling a method called parameters, and then whenever you see this, you are passing a string and an int. And so basically, we can see that we are passing a string and an int, and we know that that method is going to take in a string and an int. And as we can see here, parameter string name int. And let me go ahead and comment this out for now. But let me give you guys a little exercise. So let's say I had a method called sleep, and it took in something like this: 12, 24, 67. What do you think the method signature will have to be? Let me go ahead and delete this for now, guys. I'm just gonna delete this. Uh, this here. But let's say I want a method called sleep, and it has to meet this requirement. So for the idea is when I call this method, I have to I have to pass it in this. It has to compile. So let's go ahead and write it: public static void sleep. Is this the correct answer? Or I want you guys to give me what you guys think will be the correct answer. Or is this the correct answer? Or is this the correct answer? Little quiz. Which method do you think this one is calling? Is it calling this method? Is it calling this method? Or is it calling this method? Uh, why don't you guys go ahead and pause the video and actually give it a try? So let me go ahead and compile it. And let me just print out something. System dot out dot println. Say answer is A. And this one, let me go ahead and print out answer is B. And this one, let me go ahead and print out answer is C. So let me go ahead and run it. Let's see what this one is. And the answer is C. It calls this method right here. So if you guys actually understood this and actually really knew what I was talking about, and then you guys probably got the correct answer. So the idea is in the main method, we are calling a method called sleep. And then this method takes in 12, 24, and 67. And what is 12, 24, and 67? Those are all what? Those are all ints. So I need to find a method that takes in all ints. And which method does that? Nope, this method takes in nothing. This method, if this A was the answer, we would just have something else like this. If B was, and then B just takes in a string. So if I wanted to call B, this would have to be something that took in a string, like roll. But the idea is this one, the last one, which is C, is the one that's actually the correct answer because we are actually calling C because it takes in int x, int y, int z. And that's basically the answer and how parameters work. We'll work with a lot of parameters, but this video basically serves as an introduction to parameters. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you took something away from it. It's okay if you guys don't really understand parameters. In the next few videos, I hope to break it down into the most simplest form as I possibly can. But this video serves as its purpose is to actually show you what parameters are, and it's basically a way to put something inside the parentheses whenever you have a method. It's basically passing values from one place to another. So that's just basically that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.